Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I think I got two windows open. Let's see.
Got sounds like you're reverberating there. You sound like me.
See.
I'm loud. I sound like two people. Well, how is everybody this week?
Doing well.
Everybody's good? All right. What, Carl, what in the world you got going on with? I was getting
Thank
dizzy
you.
watching Carl scream. There you are
I'm at the beach.
at the beach. Is this
Yes,
spring break?
sir. Get spring break for us.
Yeah, I lost my bracelets too.
Everybody's on spring break. I had one, two, three, four. I had three. I have.
Ooh,
Is that me? No, I don't think
no,
that's
I
mine.
think it's still me.
Okay.
See, I'm trying to get.
I had a final defense today and two proposals, and then another one that I was in on, and all the school district people were on spring break this week, and some of them, I don't believe, had a mirror in their house, the way they were dressed. I used to work with a lady in Charlotte, Pat Collins, and Pat was this. Her husband Mal was an executive with Westinghouse down in Airwood, down south, and she was assistant principal with me at Olympic when I was principal there, and she was just this turned out lady. Um, I'm trying to remember what town Pat was come from originally, but she dressed like she fell out of Vogue every day, hair and nails and all that business. And she'd tell some of them girls, "Sweetie, you need to get you a mirror at your house." Uh, I had her handle all that kind of stuff, except for the one time I told you I had a boy that wore a dress regularly um, back in the day. He just had to wear one long enough. The girls would complain when he'd wear dresses shorter and we'd let them wear, so we'd send him home to get a longer dress too. That's just part of it. All righty. So again, let me see if I got any more in the waiting room. Yep, got James in the waiting room. So Sean and Amy joined the group, getting more work in on their policy analysis week. So I'm glad about that. And we seem to be moving along. I got a couple of housekeeping items before we get to um, our content for the evening. I'll try not to take too much of your time. I certainly appreciate, again, Carl and Jessica. You don't have to say anything what you said bad about me. That's okay. But share with them a little bit about, from your perspective, about the accreditation. This is something that when you go to the central office, it becomes a big deal. You got to get your accreditation or you're out of business. And Carl and Jessica's perspective, I picked them specifically because they're non-traditional. They're still public. They're still part of our crowd. They're still part of our family. We love charter schools as much as anything else. There's Amy. I just called her name. Amy's one of the stars of the week. Got more working on the policy analysis. So thanks for joining us tonight, Amy. But um, their perspective was current students. But I wanted them to, there comes Sean. There's the other star of the week. Um, there's Sean. Um, there she is. There's the other star of the week. So Sean and Amy, the stars of the week, they got more work in on the PA this week. Inaugurated. I've been busy. I had three proposals and a final defense today, but it was a good day. That was a really good day. But Jessica and Carl, what I asked them to do was speak on behalf of being a current student, but also not. not to highlight it, but from the perspective of all of our K-12 people, whether you're private or public or charter, I don't care. You're still our family. You're still our tribe, our crowd. And we tend to try to make this us against them, and that's not helping anybody. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands that we're an equal partnership all across the board. So Carl or Jessica, if any you want to say anything about your experience with the site team for accreditation.
Carl, you want me to talk?
Um, it was a great experience. I mean, uh, when we actually got on there, it was people from different classes, so like master's level, our level, um, and doing different programs. Um, and we really just got to get to like the feedback of how Gardner Webb does a great job at number one, making sure that you know that it's faith-based. So that is something that, we appreciate it because they do follow their mission statement. So like being able to attend, I mean, you guys know this as well, being able to attend somewhere where, you can express your faith in a Christian perspective, that lets you know that your professors are not just people who are just trying to get work done, but they actually take time to minister to you throughout the course of the journey. Because we all know that it's rough when you have to burn that midnight oil. So, we all burning that midnight oil and having a devotion. They also asked about like the flexibility um, of the schedule, but also receiving the support. And, I feel like Garden Web does a great job in making sure that we all feel like we are supported, and all of our professors are accessible, whether we have them or not. Like if we've had a professor, we know a professor that we could call right now that we don't have their class, and they are still willing to support us with either something that they said, or something that we learned from their class. Jess,
Thank you, Carl.
yes, sir.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, it was a little challenging when you're doing something like that on Zoom because it is just open-ended, and then so you've got some individuals that struggled with mute and unmute. And then there, just in our group, there was one person that is not in our same program, but was very opinionated about her specific cohort. So that kind of the person asking questions did a good job of kind of getting it back on track because it was very specific to that cohort. I think it was like instructional technology or something like that.
Yeah,
So, but they did a good job, but it was just pretty open-ended questions.
great. Well, I think Carl just hit the net. Thank you, Jessica, for that. Carl hit the nail on the head, and Jessica got 2 points here that you need to take away. When you're setting up for accreditation, what they're really looking for, as Carl said, is are you fulfilling the mission that you advertised? If you said you're a Christian place, could you tell that? If they said that they would support you, do they do that? It's accreditation is not some set of metrics that you have to meet. You tell them what you're doing, and then they assess whether you're doing it or not. You get to pick your mission. You get to pick your goal and objectives. It's that's it. People think accreditation is as though we got to do this. No, you tell them what you're going to do, but then they assess how well you're doing that. That's the notion of accreditation. That's where people get it wrong. That's people who haven't been through it don't understand it. They think it's some objective list of things that you're supposed to be doing. No, you tell them what you're doing. They assess whether you're doing it or not. It's a great point that Carl made. Are you achieving the mission, vision that you set for yourself? And then the point that Jessica made is it's okay when you pick people to have different perspectives or you want to ride as your point, but don't pick people who don't understand the mission. It's probably I'm using mission too many times here, but really, that don't understand the mission. The mission is to talk about the overall what the unit is doing or not doing, not that it's my cohort, we didn't like this or that or the other. You got to find people who understand what accreditation is about. We're not trying to silence anybody, but it's kind of awkward when everybody else knows what the mission is and you got one person who doesn't. You don't want that in your group. But this is a wonderful lesson in a policy class um, about understanding how policy works and understanding how accreditation, which is policy. Policy is instrument, accreditation is instrument. Accreditation is a policy, but you get to set it. But then we measure it to see if it works or not. That's why I say policy is instrument. You got to measure it. It has cost. And that's why accreditation is policy, is instrument, is cost. That's the chief policy that you're going to have to deal with in the central office is accreditation, which is a policy. So that's why, and also I picked people from policy class because I wanted to be able to make this point that people think, well, this is something extra. No, no. This is the biggest policy you'll ever deal with in the business is accreditation. Got to understand that. If you don't get it, you can't stay in business. You cannot stay in business. Whether it's Saks or whether it's an individual one like Cape or whatever, you got to understand policy is instrument is cost. Accreditation is the biggest policy that we have. I hope that you can see that. All right. The other thing is I put before we get to our presentations and I put an article in our shell. Anybody notice the article I put in our shell? Keith, you saw the article? All right. So let me share my screen right quick and we'll Keith give us his feedback on the article. Let me go back to here. Okay, so tonight is Zoom sessions 6 on the 9th of April. We'll have Keith and Latanya tonight, and then we'll have one more class next week, and then we'll have our last weekend. And we'll talk next week about what food we're going to bring for our last weekend. I'm doing Mexican in the other class. I don't know, we may do something different unless y'all want to do Mexican in this class. We'll do a potluck. All right, Deputy Superintendent fired. All right, this is policy class, Keith.
Mhm.
What's your takeaway other than, I don't know what kind of person this is. I don't know if she's good, bad, or indifferent. That's not my deal. Um,
I just want to start off by saying this. One of the things that we were briefed on that was kind of highlighted because it changed a little bit before I retired is that, say, for instance, um, a teacher is going through their papers, they're grading late at night. As soon as that teacher finds out, they see something that may indicate that a child is being abused or whatever, or that the child is using weapons, all that, they have to immediately call us. That's how it was in our building. And once they
yeah.
called us, we had to call the district security. And from that point on, you have to keep moving to make sure that that child is okay. So, and in this the case, I didn't read the whole thing, but I just saw the basis of it is that they had apparently evidence of some type of abuse and they didn't report it. And so, and she was involved in it. Now, I don't know if she had it directly. Like I said, I didn't read the thing. But when I read it and I thought about those four things that you had in one of the shells, and I was like, I should ask him if this is, it was like Latin words it looked like. But anyway, but yeah, that's what it was all about. So we have to be very careful whenever we are in these positions that if we hear something to the point that when we had our debriefing in our office, our principal said, as soon as you hear it, you report it directly to the SRO first as well, and then you go ahead and start moving immediately. Even if you have to send an email, but they want you to talk verbal because people don't check their emails like they should. But you should, she said, to tell them that, hey, I'm telling you this in conjunction that this is as a mandatory report or what have you.
All right. So this is an example of 115C 288. So let's look at that again. I want us to highlight, this is a law one, but I want us to highlight this one again. Let me share my screen. Let me pull it up for you right quick. There's two statutes here, and too many times folks confuse these or they apply the wrong one intentionally. Let me say
Mhm.
that again. They apply the wrong one intentionally. Sometimes because they've been told to apply the wrong one intentionally.
Mhm.
So let's go to that. 115C, 288. All right. G, as I said.
Mhm.
This one is a G, as Keith said,
Mhm.
right here. That's what he was talking about. G. What does it say the first one is here? To report certain acts to law enforcement and then to the superintendent's chain of command. It does
Mhm.
not say it the other way around.
Right.
Certain things, what does it say right here? It says sexual. Now, I don't know how to be any clearer than that. But now here's what happens. They substitute this one to make accurate reports to the superintendent. They claim, well, I told somebody, or like the deputy superintendent, I told them. And sometimes people tell them, don't you call the law, you tell me first.
Mhm.
But it's very clear right here. This
Mhm.
is a G, not a B.
Right.
I know those letters look somewhat similar, but you better not confuse a G with a B.
Mhm.
Sometimes you report it to the superintendent and then it's reported to law enforcement, like in case of embezzlement. If you suspect somebody is taking money, selling candy, not doing it, you tell the superintendent, and then law enforcement's brought in to investigate. That's okay. That's what that's for. But when one of those things that it says right there in black and white, sexual assault, any kind of that kind of stuff, who's it say to call first? I can't tell you the number of times I'd get a call. So and so happened at this school from the principal, calling me, superintendent. And what would be the first thing I'd ask them? Did you call the law? Well, no. Well, hang up. Don't call me. Call them first. I don't want to be caught in a conspiracy here.
Mhm.
I don't know what the deputy superintendent did or didn't do because I'm not her. I can only know what's reported and from what I hear from folks who work there, in that it went to her and she told them it should come to her and it didn't go any further. Um, I
Mhm.
know of a situation in a school district that I am knowledgeable about where their person in charge said, do not put in any of those persistently dangerous incidents into Power School. Run it by me first. Is that legal?
No.
All of those persistently dangerous are law enforcement calls, every one of them. They're all G's. Rape, sexual assault, sexual offense, death, kidnapping, assault with a weapon, assault with serious incident, and indecent liberties with children. How do I know all nine off the top of my head? Because I had to for a lot of years. Any of those are G's, folks. What do you mean? Call me before you put one in. No. Uh, what does the law say? The law says you call the law. You call that SRO immediately. If you can't get him, you call whoever that next person is. Now, I'm not saying, now Dale didn't say call 911.
Mhm.
I did not say that and have all the emergency over there and everyone needs me and everybody else, but you need to get it that your call can't be, or your contact or your passing of information can't be somebody else who's civilian. They got to be a law enforcement entity. That's the only thing that will protect you, that you're hiding this deal. That's the only thing that will protect you. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. It can't be, well, my deputy or assistant superintendent said I had to call them first. Well, then, but they can't give you permission to break the law. What does the law say? Law says you call law enforcement first and then the superintendent or their designee. Make sure you understand that the law is very clear. There's not a lot of leeway in law, especially in cases like that. This is what we're talking about. Um, I hate this happen. I always hate to see things like this, but again, this is not one of those gray areas, folks. This is not a gray area. It is not. Some policy is, law is not. And we have to be reminded of that on a regular basis. That I don't care how high you get in this, and the reason I brought this one in is I don't care how high you get in the central office. Nobody's above the law. Nobody is above the law. Oh, I'm past my time already. All right, it's time for our book reports tonight. Thank you for listening to that, but it's a good reminder for all of us. The difference between B and G.
Right.
115C 288. You got to remember that one. That's the one those are the ones that get you. All right, Keith, I believe you're up first tonight. I'll stop my camera so you can share your screen.
Okay. I'll yield. Let ladies go first. No, I'm joking. All right, I'm gonna pull it up here. Hopefully I can. Oh my goodness. Documents. Hold on. Let's see. Hold on, man. I have it, y'all. I'm just trying to see how I'm gonna get it from this bottom. Let me see here. Now maybe I can do it. Want to share. Share screen. Do you all see it now?
No,
Okay.
not yet.
Okay. Now you can.
It's coming.
Okay.
It's not here yet, but it's on the way. All right, now it's here.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Of course, my name is Keith McLendon, and I do have chapters 9 and 10. And both those chapters are kind of are related because they deal with the employment discrimination as well as discrimination or things that might happen even in the hiring process. So, and there was so many things that it was in this chapter, but I'm gonna try to keep it brief because once I had so many notes, I was just like, okay, I need to back off. So, so I wouldn't be here all night. Okay, so the 14th Amendment, it has equal protection clause, and it has the four things there that they use as far as the hold on one second. Make sure I have this correct thing. Um, those are the ones that are the due process, those due process which protect employees from being mistreated or basically being discriminated upon, that they don't endure any of those types of things. So that due process clause where they are going to have to make sure that they're just not dismissing people for no reason at all. So they have that note, they have to be, and I think it's on the next slide. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. The Title VII, which is the Civil Rights Act, it prohibits any discrimination based on the things that are listed there, because of course it came out of the civil rights where African Americans weren't able to get jobs, and then they were also discriminating because of religion and those types of things. So, Title VII prohibits any type of discrimination based on any of these factors. Title IX is sexual discrimination. It includes the employment practices as far as it might be hiring practices, also sexual harassment. Now, when it comes to that sexual harassment part, it talked about how sometimes people are reluctant to report it because when you're in telling the details, it can make them feel very uncomfortable. But that all falls under Title IX. It prohibits any kind of sexual discrimination in schools. This ability protections, of course, is the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which includes the 504, and it's also the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act. When you're dealing with those things, you have to make sure that you are providing reasonable accommodations. For example, when I was working, I just want to drop this in there so I can keep moving. But a lot of times, whenever parents who wanted their children to have things, it could be they stump their toe. I'm just using that as being facetious, but they want to make sure that they try to come in and get 504s. And so, but what we have to do is just give a reasonable accommodation. Had one to break their leg once. They wanted a private bus to come and pick up their child. And so what we did is try to make sure that the child can get on the front seat of the bus. But all those things have protections as far as disabilities, and you can't discriminate against an employee if they have a disability. Pregnancies, likewise. The book talked about several instances where there were individuals who they might have continued to go on family leave after their pregnancy and those types of things. And so there is no discrimination when it comes to a person who's pregnant. You can't, even if they're pregnant and they're not married, there were cases that it talked about where uh, it talked about the moral part of it, but the law now is that you cannot discriminate against someone pregnant or having gotten pregnant during their tenure in a position. Sexual harassment. Now I put my pronunciation notes here. Quid pro quo versus hostile environment. So sexual harassment is prohibited. These are some of the cases that it had there to help solidify to understand where that particular law came from. But sexual harassment in any form is not touching. That's why it's important that when you're speaking with people, y'all, as a male, I try to make sure I'm always in company of people, even when it's with the children. The door's open or I'm speaking to them where not everybody can hear, but I try not to get myself in a place where that type of thing, when I was working, could be said about me. Recruitment practices. You must be equal opportunity. There must be equal opportunity for everyone. If a person has the same qualifications, uh, they should be, and then if they determine that their application was not, hiring somebody who has less experience or no experience at all, they can also sue. And so the chapter talked about that as well. Tenure teachers, they are protected. The key case here was the Board of Regents versus Raw. Uh, Tenured teachers, it talked about one example of a teacher who's, um, I'll make sure I'm not getting this mixed up with the age discrimination, but where their contract was not renewed because of their, well, I think that is age, because of their age. And so the law now is that a person can work after they turn 70, but they cannot lose their job just because they are turning a certain age. Dismissal for cause. It requires a valid and documented reasons. One of the first things that I endured whenever I became an AP, actually it was in my uh, when I was going through my oh God, what is it called? Um, Internship. That was one of the first things they wanted me to do. It was a lady. She was tenured too. I mean, she was a veteran teacher. She probably had been teaching at that point 30 years, but her ability to make an impact with the students. When you go in, she wasn't doing. So what we had to do is we had to go in, document. Uh, I'll go in, then the principal and the actual AP that was there, they would go in as well, so that it could be three different point of views and what we saw, and not just one person. Due process, this is the part I was talking about earlier. Due process requirements. You must give notice and there must be a hearing. If you don't do those types of things, those two things, you are not really doing the due process that is required. And those are the key cases that were mentioned in that chapter. The Fair Labor Standard Act, wages and protections, wages and hours. Now, we know that in some cases this still is not the case, but uh, a person should get the same wage as the next person. It goes back to that being equal and fair within the systems. And so, wherever the workplace is, and that Fair Labor Standard Act protects the wages and the hours of making sure that if I work this many hours, I should get the same pay as the next person, and I shouldn't have to work more hours than someone else. And again, these are some of the key cases with that one as well. Right to work law, you you don't have to join a union. It's not required. That should not be a part of whether or not you are employed. And we know that in the past, there are a lot of people who had those types of things going on. They broke the boycott lines or whatever they were heard of, what have you. But there is no law that says you have to have memberships in different organizations in order to be employed. Collective bargaining, that part of the goes along with that for the most part. That the negotiations between the unions and the districts, the school district. I was a part of the NCAE for many years, and when I was a teacher. But what has to happen is that if you were going to do that type of thing, it had to be after school hours. You couldn't talk about it. You couldn't put anything in their boxes. You might do it after school or something, and then you could work with kids. Not kids, but you can work, but you can't do anything with them while they're there to teach the kids. Same thing here with teacher strikes. It talked about that. It often you might see those types of things, but if the courts may issue injunctions and penalties, but say, for instance, if someone wanted to boycott or what have you, it's not a reason for you to take their jobs, which we see that a lot here in a lot of the teachers take off and they go to Raleigh, and then they can still come back and go to their jobs. Anyone ever participated in those? Oh, nobody. Okay. Um, and that is it. That is 9 and 10 in a nutshell. Any questions? Any concerns from anyone?
No, that's great. Great job. You summarized that very well. I want to highlight a couple of things. You can go ahead and stop your share.
Okay.
Um, just like student due process,
hmm
employees get due process as well, and you have the same two standards. Now, follow this closely. I talked about accreditation earlier, where you set your own mission, vision, you set your own standards, and do you achieve them? Generally, you don't get to set your own standards in due process. But there are standards, there are achievables, there are requirements. We call those substantive due process. What's the substance? What's the law say you have to do? The two times that this is most important is hiring and firing. There is a list of 9 things that you have to do before you hire somebody. There's a list of 7 things that you have to do before you fire somebody. 9, 7. Those are set by the federal government. This is federal law. That's the substance of the due process law for hiring and firing. Now, procedural is did you carry out those 9 things to hire or those 7 things to fire? That's the issue. You didn't get to set what the agenda was. That's the substantive. That's outside of your purview. What you will be adjudicated on in your trial or your when you're up on the rug about this, did you follow those 9 steps? Did you follow those 7 steps? Did you do those things? Now, it's not as simple as you would think that would be, because sometimes both in the hiring and in the firing, there are other persons involved. When you go to a new district that you are unfamiliar with, or when you move into administration and you're unfamiliar, what you need to do is sit down and figure out what are the steps and who does them, who is responsible to do them. And that varies from district to district. That's the problem that we have as school administrators is when I was in Burke County, I told you this story. I had to do all 9. When I was in Charlotte, I had to do 1. It was my responsibility in hiring to do 9 of the 9 things. If they didn't get done, that circled back on me. All I had to do in Charlotte was number 7 of the 9. I just had to pick eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I didn't have to get their resumes. I didn't have to do the blood test. I didn't have to do the reference checks. I didn't have to do the curriculum interview. I didn't have to do, all I had to do was the final interview, which was number 7. Then it goes to the superintendent. And then what's number 9? It goes to the board. I had to carry, you say, well, Dale, you didn't have to do the last 2 in Burke. Yeah, I did. I had to carry it to the superintendent and I had to carry it to the board. I had to go to the board meeting when I wanted to hire somebody. Had to go all through 9 steps to make sure every one of the 9 steps was done. All I had to do in Charlotte was number 7, just pick. They'd send me 3 people. Which of these 3 do Manny, Mo, or Jack? Which one do you want? You got to know that. You got to know what's your responsibility. Now, on the other end of that, on the firing, I had to do 5 of the 7 in Burke. I only had to do 1 of the 7 in Charlotte. You got to know what are the 9 things, what are the 7 things, but more importantly, whose responsibility is it to do the 9 and the 7? That's the difference between substantive due process and procedural. They are the same things. It's just who carries them out. These are things you got to do, but who does them? That's the important piece. Same thing for student discipline. Who does them? Now, I'm still with you. Sexual harassment. That one gets administrators in more trouble than anything else I can think of. So if you had me for school law, I have a hard and fast rule. I don't care if people like it or not. If something sexual comes to me, I call the law, period. I call the law, period. If something sexual comes to me, I go to the law immediately. Why? You said, but Dale, it does under G, it doesn't say sexual harassment. But here's my experience, and I could probably cite over 300 cases of this. A large percentage of time, when a student comes to you and says somebody is sexually harassing me, there's been some form of physical contact. Let me say that again. A large majority of the times when somebody reports to you that they've been sexually harassed, when you're doing the investigation, when you start talking to them to get their side of the story, there'll be a point where some kind of physical contact was made. At that point, what should you do? Stop. Call the law. Why? Any legal scholars in the room? It just left sexual harassment and went to what when some sort of physical contact happened. It just went from sexual
So,
harassment to sexual assault.
thought. Mhm.
Uh-oh, G said, what do you got to do on sexual assault?
Call the law.
Call the law. And you've already started the investigation. Uh-oh. Does law enforcement like that? When you start one and get in the middle of it and find out it was deeper than you thought, what will they do to you? They'll throw you under the bus. I won't use any names to protect the guilty, but there was a school in the northern part, a high school in the northern part of Mecklenburg County. Um, a girl came in and said she'd been sexually assaulted. Well, she said she'd been sexually harassed. They got to investigate and found out that she was actually having sex. But they said that's no problem. She's 16. What's the law say? 16 is the age of consent in North Carolina, except when? If you're mentally incapacitated and can't make a decision. What if you're self-contained DC, SCB, what is it, SBC? Self-contained. If you're self-contained DC, can you legally consent at 16? That would be no. And so when the school said no harm, no foul, she's 16, the mother went to police in Huntersville. What did the police say? We're quite sure a crime was committed, but since the school, tainted all the evidence, we don't feel like we can pursue the case. Chief of police on Huntersville came on Channel 3 and said that. Uh-oh. How many did I have to let go? That would be 5. That's real, folks. That's real. And so what did I tell everybody in the district after that? If you get a sexual report, call the law first. Let them sit there, have them in the room when you start questioning. And so if it becomes if it moves from a harassment to an assault when there's a physical contact, they're right there with you. They can't blame you if it doesn't come out like the parent wants it to. You got to protect yourself. And I'm telling you, the majority of the cases that you have sexual harassment reports, there will be in some kind of physical contact. It's just the way it works. It's just probabilities. To protect yourself, you need to make sure law enforcement is involved from the get-go. You say, well, Dale, they said it was harassment, and so I started. I don't know. They may not know the law. And then when they say, when he grabbed me, uh-oh, uh-oh. What's Dale's rule about getting out of a swamp? Best way to get out of a swamp, don't get in it.
Get in it.
Have the law there with you. Now, I'm highlighting this tonight because, again, that's why I had this one tonight because I knew Keith was going to do his deal tonight here. These are the things that get you looking for new work or losing your house, this kind of stuff. Because I hate to say this, I'm going to use a term that's probably too general. It's commonplace now. This is not a once a year kind of thing that you might get. In high schools, you get this pretty frequently now, especially larger high schools. You get this pretty frequently now. I won't talk about the political climate that caused, but I'm just telling you, this kind of thing has made a resurgence. You better play the odds, better have the law there on the sexual harassment deal. That is my recommendation to you. You can do what you want, grown people, but I would have the law. When I started any kind of questioning on sexual harassment, I would want them there because it could very likely and most likely will turn into a sexual assault charge. All right, now on dismissal. Again, an anecdotal story. Um, One of the best friends I ever had in life um, passed away 30 years ago this past Christmas. We were like brothers. We traveled together. We played golf. Um, he died at 48, too young, cancer. that's immaterial to the story. But his career got derailed fairly early on for dismissing a teacher. He had to. Um, it was a clear case that needed to be. It wasn't one of these in between. It wasn't, it wasn't. The teacher committed a heinous act, and even in the district where he was, I guess getting two girls pregnant as a faculty member at the same time was a bridge too far. I guess one was okay, but when he got two pregnant at the same time, he had to go. I can't make that part up. Um, but understand that won't make people happy. He was winning ball games. He was a coach and winning ball games. Um, and the solution that the district had was to let the assistant principal go that they made fire him. That was their solution to get over some of the public furor of firing a winning football coach. Again, one pregnant girl would have been okay, but two was a bridge too far, even in Polk, I guess. But my point in that story, and that's absolutely a true story, absolutely, as I'm sitting here tonight, is understand when you start dismissing people, it's not just that person who's going to be angry. Um, but my story is that should not deter you. You got to do what you've got to do, but understand this is not one of those things where a burden shared is a burden halved. It is not. I'm going to tell you that right now before you start. It is not. It is your burden, and that's part of the job. You got to come to that accommodation. Yes, bad things can happen, even if you're a good person and you did the right thing and got rid of a bad person. I'm not telling you that the world's all puppy dogs and roses. I'm telling you that dismissing people is a dirty business. That don't mean you avoid it. That don't mean you do your job. I'm just telling you that's kind of the litmus test. That's kind of the litmus test for school administration. Um, if you can't get through that piece of it, this is just Adele talking to y'all tonight. If you can't get through that piece of it, this is not for you. You know, I hate to be that blunt, but I'm just telling you, if you can't do that, if you can't worry about what the blowback's going to be. You don't need to be out talking to other people about it because then you get in trouble for, disclosing private information. When you let somebody go, you can't say anything about what they did or didn't do, especially to the media. You can't go out and try to justify what you did and I'm the good guy here and he was the bad guy. You can't do any of that stuff. This is one of them burdens you just got to carry with you, and it is a burden on your soul. It is a burden on your soul. It is not easy. It won't get easier. Um, there's no way to feel better about it, but you got to do it. That's enough about that. All right, moving on. LaTanya, you ready?
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
All right, I'll turn my camera off and give y'all a break.
All right. Yeah, let me know when you can see my screen.
You can. You're rolling.
All right. So I had the task of reporting on Chapter 9 of Policy Evaluation, determining if the policy works from Fowler. Sometimes I have an issue with too much information, but I'm working on that. But however, I'll try to get through this real
Yeah,
quick.
we got to get you in
Okay.
dissertation mode. Just big ideas here, just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah. All right. So, this chapter basically started talking about the history of policies and when evaluations actually started, and it predated all the way back before the pre-Civil War, and then all the way up to present day. And this time, currently, they call it like the age of accountability and the age of evaluation. And the interesting thing that I found out going through this information was the 1971 Pi Delta Kappa um, actually formed a national committee and recommended that new evaluation methods be developed because the previous evaluations always had negative findings. And we actually have one of those organizations on Gardner Webb's campus, which I was inducted in. That was kind of cool. And they were kind of like the ones to kind of spearhead the revamping of the way you do evaluations, which led to 1983 when they had the 10 different models of how to do evaluations. So through that, they came up with the basic evaluation process for everyone, which was determining goals and objectives, indicators, developing data collection instruments, collecting data, analyzing, writing the report, and then responding to recommendations. And then they went on to kind of develop the criteria that we use for evaluations, which was in the most recent edition of the Program Evaluation Standards, a guide for evaluators and evaluation users. So from that, they had 30 different standards that they grouped under 5 different categories, which was the utility, which, makes it meaning that the report be useful in evaluation, which kind of comes with being able to have well-qualified individuals or consultants identifying your stakeholders, having relevant sources, writing your reports in clear language and different versions to accommodate different languages, and reports not being too long, having the summaries and making it practical. Then it goes into the feasibility, which makes the the recommendations and evaluations doable and practical without causing a strain on the school or the district. And then it went to proprietary, which was making sure that it was legal and ethical, meaning that it shouldn't have the evaluator shouldn't have any conflict of interest as far as knowing the people personally, whether it's professional, having any financial interest or any close friends, and they have to sign a contract with the organization, understanding the purpose and the details and the completion date. And then it had accuracy, which was, of course, making sure that they provide accurate reports and then studying the context of the policy to familiarize themselves with it and to make sure they explain specifics on the data that they use to make the determination and how it was actually based. The accountability, of course, which was evaluators conducting evaluations that will hold them accountable, and they fully document procedures that they use, and they assess the work during the process and after the process. So she kind of went through the purposes of the evaluations, which was to do a summative evaluation, which they usually use that to determine like the funding. If you've had a program for a long time and it's time for it to be reauthorized, or them to determine if they're going to implement it to provide funding for it again, they do that. Formative, it just enables the implementers to make changes throughout the life of the policy as it goes through. And then they have the pseudo evaluations that's not always conducted in good faith, but it's more politically controlled study, which is basically motivated on the political side of it with the data collection, to provide the desired results that they want to happen instead of reflecting the truth. And then they have the public relations, which is designed to specifically come with the outcome that would project a good public image and make their image look better to everyone else. Of course, they talked about the different methodologies that use, which we know about the quantitative, which is usually analyzing the statistical and the numerical data. And then the qualitative was the verbal and pictorial data. And then they called their holistic evaluations is what we consider mixed methods, which you kind of mix the two together to get both sides of it. But they said that the qualitative is really not a good one because of the time and the cost of it, but they say quantitative is better because of the less time that it takes to get it done, and it's usually more cost effective. However, if you use both of the two to get both sides of it, then it's best to do it that way. They also went into how they call it nervous making when it comes to policy evaluation time, because evaluations can threaten people's political and professional careers and stances. So they use that to influence what happens in the political arenas. And sometimes people can lose their jobs, positions, and lose money, or programs can get dismissed. So people get nervous when it comes to evaluation time. So it also went into how leaders can kind of plan for the politics of it, by understanding the players and the motivations. So they talked about the policymakers. They usually request the evaluations to make important decisions. The implementers, those are the district personnel involved in putting the policy into practice. The clients are the students, that are directly the clients, and then indirectly would be the parents. And then, interesting enough, they went into talking about how the parents want favorable outcomes, but if they didn't get favorable outcomes, they were still usually okay, because it still provided special services for their children, and sometimes it could save them money. And they talked about evaluators, which want to produce thorough and accurate evaluations that lead to good decisions. Um, they also went into going to the different kind of tactics and maneuvers. One was that you would have people that try to prevent the evaluation altogether. You have others that try to shape the outcome. Then you have people who try to mobilize clients against the evaluators. You have implementers that make data collection difficult. That means they'll make things disappear. And then you have stakeholders that attack the quality of the evaluation by trying to discredit different parts of it. Um, they talked about different solutions that a leader can have, which is open communication from the beginning and throughout the whole process, to kind of let the stakeholders know what's going on, so that if somebody does try those things, everybody's always aware of what's going on. Having summative evaluation and formative evaluations in the plan throughout, so that there are no surprises. Sharing all the objectives and giving the stakeholders a chance to give feedback, ask questions, or share their issues. And selecting indicators to monitor before the policy is actually implemented, so that the implementers can be reassured and make data collection easier. Um, Another thing they were talking about was the different alternatives that you could use when you're choosing your evaluators. They said this, the best thing to do is to choose two evaluators instead of one, so that you can kind of balance the advantages and the disadvantages. And having one internal evaluator to do the formative evaluations throughout the implementation, and then one external to do the summative evaluation, so they can kind of have a basis of data information to kind of compare it to. So the four different types of evaluations are the implementers that you have inside your organization, because they already have insider access and they're more willing to act on negative findings. You have specialized evaluation staff. Those are trained in evaluations that may work in the district office or in your organization, and they're well qualified in methodology. You have outside agencies or contracted consultants who are they qualified. They're more credible, but they don't know your socio-political environment. And then you have your actual funding organization, which are like your state legislator or your foundations or school districts that have their actual skilled and professional evaluation that come in, that are also credible, but they may have their own agenda. So they went into 4 courses of action that you can take when you get your actual report for your evaluations. That's in action, where you do nothing at all and you maintain the current policy. You have minor modifications. That's if, there are only little tweaks here and there that you need to change, or changes that are impossible because of political reasons. Then you have major modifications, which usually threatens your stakeholders' job security by reducing like services or placements or parts of the program are discontinued. You have consolidation where you have two or more different parts of a different program that are combined. You can split programs which one aspect is removed, and you can decriminating, which is reduction in the amount of money. And then, of course, you terminate it altogether, which means that you get rid of the policy without replacing another available program. All right, that's my reference for that. And then I also was reporting on the CEDARS, which is the Common Education Data Analysis and Reporting System. And it's basically a hub where you have all your registration systems, your security administration requirements, user guides, and support. Accountability systems for all the schools and departments for North Carolina public school system. It's where you can match your staff and student records over time across applications if they move to different North Carolina public schools, and it gives you statewide longitudinal data, reporting and analysis. And it's actually, they said they use it as a strategy for administering and enforcing the non-discrimination civil rights laws for the Office of Civil Rights Department officers, policymakers, and researchers outside of the department who want to know the extent to which the nation's students have equal access to educational opportunities. And in a nutshell, it's like a one-stop shop to find all data related to anything and everything dealing with the North Carolina public school systems. And that is all.
All right. Thank you, Latanya. That was great. Why did I have her do CETAs with evaluation? Why did I put those two together?
Because that's where all of the reports and the data is collected.
And if you're going to do an evaluation, remember, you got to do your literature review first, and you got to establish your problem statement. You got to go get some data that says this is a problem, or we need to look at this. It's also, if you're doing your own evaluation, you can compare to what other people are doing. You can look at their data. So always know where your repositories are when you're going to do evaluation. Now, well, I sound like a broke record. I'm the most repetitive person, redundant person in the world. Policy is instrument is cost. If you got a policy, folks, you got to evaluate it. It is instrument, and it costs, and that's why I've told you for a dissertation, don't get involved in a program evaluation unless your district really wants it and they're the one pushing it. And even then, you be careful because it may gore somebody's ox. It might be yours. Policy is instrument is cost. All of a sudden, people in the business, and Tanya made a great point. They may not help you because they don't want people to know because they might lose their people, they might lose money, they might lose funding. All of those kinds of things can happen, but you really need to do program evaluation, and you really need, and it mostly needs to be quantitative. We do a lot of qualitative work now, which we've decided that mixed and quantitative. I'm not what we need to be doing. I'm glad they're still training you to do the program evaluation, but you got to be very selective in that. When you're out in the real world, yeah, you'll have to do that, but you don't sign on for that unless you have to because it's jobs and money. And you got to be careful of that. Yeah, when you're getting paid to do that, and that's your job, that's one thing. But when you're choosing it, I'm going to choose it. That wouldn't be something I'd be wanting to sign on for. Now, I've got a document here. Now, before I show you, I didn't post it. There was a reason why. Um, I'm not showing you this to show you how to cheat with data. I'm showing you this so that you will understand when people are being deceptive or trying to pull the wool over your eyes. This is not that Dale said go out and this is how you can beat the numbers. That's not what this is for. But let me pull that up. Give me just 1 second. All right. Let me make it a little bit bigger here. All right. This is my top 10 ways to cheat with data so that you'll know. All right. First one is use an invalid measure or just something anecdotal that's not been validated, or use a validated measure incorrectly. I see this one all the time. We'll use this system to evaluate. Well, who validated that system? Or this is what somebody else was using, and it's close enough for what we're doing. Or they'll use something they'll claim is like a validated instrument, like say a watch, my watch, but we're gonna measure weight with it instead of time. We're using the wrong instrument. That's the whole idea, or an instrument that's not the right instrument for what we're trying to do. Um, Using a validated measure unreliable. An example: test administration outside mandated security protocols, such as allowing access to the test prior to administration. I see that one a lot. That will allow you to kind of manipulate the results of the test or the administration. Or we tell people what we're going to measure. We tell them before we come, or we pass the test out as the study guide, that kind of thing. That's what we're talking about. The instrument itself, remember, instruments are valid. That doesn't automatically mean that the data that they provide is reliable. If we use them in an unethical, illegal, immoral, or improper way, that means the data is no good either. Um, we see that a lot in test administration in schools. We do something outside. We let teachers prompt. We give them the test. They make a study guide out of it. Whatever. The notion here is you can't just assume that because the validated instrument was used, that it was used correctly and produced reliable data. You have to be able to test the reliability of that data. You must figure out a way to do that. Disguising anecdotal information as validated data, for example, um, collecting and distributing analysis of subjective information, which implies validated objective data. If you go out and talk to people, if you do qualitative work, it is as long as you say that this is people's perceptions. Why do we make you put that on the title of a dissertation? Teachers' perceptions of. We don't say program evaluation of the letters program. It's teachers' perceptions of. Why do we make you do that? To distinguish between people's opinion, which is subjective, and some kind of an objective measure or scale. Is there an objective measure of scale in qualitative work? There is not. That would be on the quantitative side. But I see a lot of times anecdotal information, which is people's beliefs, being paraded around as validated data. It is not. Choosing your data source, cherry picking the data that supports your narrative position, ignoring those that does not. I get that a lot. I get that a lot in dissertation work, but we get that a lot in organizations. Um, Deposits are up for admissions, for example. Let's say a college said deposits are up. Is that really data? Is that an outcome variable? Are we sure that everybody that paid a $25 deposit is coming? That would be no. What do we need to report? We need to report how many actually showed up. I see that a lot where we take something that's not really uh, an outcome, but we run it up and down the flag and say, look at us. or we pick the things that look good, but we ignore the things that look bad. You got to make sure that when you're running an evaluation system that you get all the data, that you don't just get some of the data, or you just cherry pick the stuff that makes you look good and ignore the stuff that makes you look bad. Choosing a reporting system predetermines the outcome. Example, comparative accountability of school performance data only addresses the demographics of school populations to the growth. All right, so when we look at proficiency scores, if we only look at that, some schools are always going to do well. But we knew that before we started because of pupil assignment. Again, proficiency is who you got. I see a lot of school districts, they'll do evaluations, and what they're basically producing is their proficiency data. Well, that's who you got. We know that that's going to go well for some schools and going to go bad for others. Which one? But the issue is, if we really want to talk about effectiveness, we got to talk about growth. Some schools, we know that the outcome before we start. If we say we're going to evaluate them on proficiency, we know that they're a Title I school. They're going to come out bad. And when we look at the ones with high wealth schools, we know they're going to come out good. It had nothing to do with what they did at the school every day. It had to do with who showed up every day. So we have to be careful that when we're picking a system, that instrument to evaluate a program, treatment, fix, a school district, a policy, a program, that we don't pick something that we know what the outcome is going to be before we start, based on how that measure is set up. Proficiency again measures who you got, not what you did with them. And the winners and losers are decided before we ever pull up in front of the building, according to the pupil assignment. Growth is the actual measure that we need to use. That's what you do with them. Change the metric. So during the pandemic, when you don't have when you have control over the source of the data, sometimes you change the metrics. So back during the pandemic, we counted, and we still do this, by the way. We changed unemployment rate from people without jobs to people on unemployment benefits. Let me say that again. Now let's think about this one for a minute. Prior to the pandemic, people without jobs were that was how the unemployment rate was calculated. During the pandemic, we changed that to the unemployed were only the people who were receiving benefits, unemployment benefits. I'm going to even stop my share. We're going to talk about this one for a minute. Sounds like a simple change. What if you were on your unemployment benefits for your length of time, you still don't have a job? Are you still unemployed? Well, yeah. Do you count now on the unemployment figures? No, you don't. When that didn't get the rate down as low as the people in charge of this shenanigans, what did they do to the length of time you could be on unemployment? It went from what, 12 weeks to 3. Why do you think we have historic low unemployment rates, but how many people do you know don't have jobs? They don't see that's the anecdotal piece of this is you know that unemployment rate does not reflect the people without jobs. The unemployment rate now has a new metric. It has a new meaning. It has a new definition. It's now unemployment is the people who are getting benefits, unemployment benefits. That's what it means now. It doesn't mean people without jobs. So change the metric. That's one of the ways that you can cheat the system. Change the metric, and after the 12 weeks was up, then they no longer counted them, and that didn't get the numbers down low enough. We cut the benefits back to shorter time period of time, and now all of a sudden we have historic unemployment rates. But we're still comparing the new metric to the old one when we say we have historic. No, we're just not measuring unemployment like we used to. We changed the metric. Have you seen that in the school business? Yes, I've seen that in the school business as well. Can anybody give me an example? And I'll even give you a hint. It's with the littles. What is it? Who are the littles in the school business? Who are the littles? K2s. We've called them the littles. What did we do in the K2 world to change the metric to make it look better than it really was? We started having teachers do the assessment rather than the kids. Anybody work with littles now? In the K2 world, who does the assessment? Did the kids take a test? No. Who does their assessment? The teachers do. What happened to the scores when we did that? We had this real big problem down in the lower grades with the littles that they couldn't read and write. It was just a national crisis. All of a sudden, what did we do? Instead of getting kids, working kids, get them to be able to read and write, what did we do? We changed the metric. We started having the teachers fill out their assessment of the kids. And what happened to the scores? They went up drastically. But what happens now? We're talking about the cliff in third grade. The cliff in third grade is a myth, folks. Let me say that again. I'll go on WBTV tonight and I'll say it out loud. The third grade cliff is a myth. It does not exist. Why not? Think about the numbers. Think about what I'm telling you here. Why is the third grade cliff a myth? The kids were never really that high. What did we do to the K2 scores? We manipulated them so they'd go up. When we get them to third grade and we claim there's a big cliff and they drop down, did they really drop? No. They were never that high to start with. We traded one problem for another. The hullabaloo was on if the kid can't read by third grade, we're failing as a society, the school system, all that. So what did we do to manipulate the K2 scores? Did we get smarter kids? No, that wasn't an option. We changed the metric. We changed how that we assessed and reported those kids. We changed the metric. The teachers started doing it. And what they start doing, we knew they would happen. Well, I know Johnny can do that. Johnny's over there in the corner eating boogers, but I know Johnny can write at the third grade level. No, Johnny can't. Johnny never could. But the teachers don't want to say that I hadn't taught these kids anything. And so the scores went up in K2. They went way up. And now we claim there's a cliff at third grade. When we get them in third grade, they're back down where they were before. Oh, there's something's happening in third grade. They're drinking this lead in the water. No, no. You solved one problem and created one somewhere else. And that's the problem with changing the metric. I've seen it done 1,000 times. That's the problem with changing the metric. You just move the problem from one place to another. You kick the can down the road. That's exactly what we did in K2 in North Carolina when we changed how we assessed the littles. We kicked the can to third grade. Now we're blaming the third grade teachers. All y'all fell and hit y'all's head. No, they didn't. But by that simple change in the metric, we changed, we fixed one problem and created another. All right, back to my share. Bias the survey. Phrase questions subjectively instead of objectively. How do you feel question? And like, what did the instructor do or not do? Instead of what was done or not done, ask your opinion or how you feel about what was done or not done. To gather performance data, feedback, you're not getting performance, you're getting opinion. That's what you do when you bias the statement, or when you bias your sample or your data collection. When you have leading or loaded questions, like when did you stop beating your wife? Well, that presupposes that you beat your wife already. Um, I see that a lot when students have their survey or interview questions because of their own bias. We dealt with that today. We had a team meeting for one of our dissertation candidates today because her instrument was biased. Now she had an expert that helped her develop it, but the expert had skin in the game as well. And we felt like that it was biased and that principals would, there was no way for principals to come out and do it if they answered this survey. That's what we're talking about here. And then we parade that around again as data. Again, it's just opinion. And leading questions, biased questions, that's one of the ways to get what you want. Blame the victim. Um, we know through an analysis of variance and the regression model of EVOS that teachers only contribute 10% of the variance in a student score. Let me say that again. 10 teachers only account for 10% of the variance in a kid's score. 10% is all. The other 90, and I've shown you the model. The other 90 is race, gender, mother's education, father's income. Teacher only counts 10 points, 10% of the variance in a kid's score. But we publicly shift all the blame to teachers and not the political and economic decisions that impact 90% of the other variance. Or we imply that all independent variables in the regression are of equal weight. That they all count the same. No, they don't. Race is 30. Mother's education is 15. Father's income is 15. Teacher is 10. So how many times did we hear schools are failing? It's all the teacher's fault. 10%, good or bad. 10% of the variance in a kid's score. That's all. Again, understand how analysis of variance and regressions work. I've used with you the EVOS model. Discredit the source of the data. When you have no control over it, discredit it. This is not real. This is wrong. They're after me. That's one of the reasons I had Latanya review Cedars. That data has been vetted. You can't argue with it. It's there. You have to live with it. And when all else fails, just change the numbers. Um, you know, have a celebrity get up and say it, somebody they know or like. Persons generally attach 95% confidence level in what a celebrity is saying and only 5% in what the disclaimer says, when the truth is actually the opposite. Let me say that again. Do you see these celebrities come on TV and advertise something and they got something down at the bottom of the screen in fine print? Only 5% of what they're saying is true and 95% of the disclaimer, but we think it's the other way around. So we get somebody else to come out and, somebody that known or liked or whatever, or we just change the numbers. That's not true. We just change them. All these things are classic ways to cheat with data. I did not introduce them to you so that you would do them. If you are going to do evaluation, policy evaluation, program evaluation, you have to know all the pitfalls. You have to know the stuff. I've told you just one of the things that we deal with I deal with on a daily basis is data gathering. One of my organizational leadership students was going to collect. They were doing an ethics project at a state university. We identified her population of staff, 496. That they'd only let us survey 100 people. And then they said as soon as you get to 50 responses, we're cutting it off. Why did they do that? They're trying to control the narrative. They understand. They understand. To achieve significance, to lower the number, they can argue that the sample wasn't, that was only 10% of the sample. How do we usually, in order to put any sense of reliability into data, what percent of the population do you need to have data from? At least 30%. So they intentionally limited us to 10%. So what did they do if they didn't like the numbers? Just change them. This is not right. There wasn't enough people. This isn't accurate. Why'd they do that? Because they knew the numbers were going to be bad. That's the kind of stuff that we deal with. That's what I told you about. It's really difficult to get data from school districts. I told you. Melissa did her dissertation in one of the Richlands on their math program. They gave us 26 schools worth of data. We were able to get enough, only get enough to be able to run any analysis on 5 of the 26. The data was so dirty and disorganized. Took us 6 months just to clean it up. And we finally found that we had 5 schools that we could use the data from. 6 months of work. Got 5 out of 26. Do you think that was a mistake or that was an error? No. They didn't think we were going to be able to get 5 out of it. Because the people who said, yeah, we want to do this, not the people who knew that where the blame was going to fall. So back to Latanya's point, when you've got to have some inside people when you're doing evaluation who know where the data is and know how the system works. But then you run the risk of their bias, of them protecting theirs or their own or wanting to gore somebody else's ox. It's really difficult. It's really good to get clean data. It's good. It's hard to get it in the volume that you need to get, reliability, significance. You get return rates, they plan where you only get a 10% return rate on your population. You know, the, those kinds of things. The same problems that we have in dissertation, you have amplified in the real world in the school business over trying to evaluate policy or programs. You have the same issues. People are protecting their turf. People are afraid. People know that it could turn out bad for them. Those are all the issues. Now that I'm not saying this so that you will cheat or that you will be deterred. I'm just telling you, you got to understand everybody's not going to be on your side when you're running a program evaluation or a policy evaluation. You're going to have more enemies than friends. You don't take that on lightly. You better have the full weight measure of the district behind you when you do those kinds of things, because that's what it's going to take to get it done. Everybody's not going to be your buddy anymore. It's a tough world. It's a tough world. Thank you for being with me tonight and putting up for an hour and a half. Our 2 presenters tonight, Latanya and Keith, you did a great job. I like how you summarized that. Um, we will talk next week. I'll see you next Thursday night. We'll talk about our potluck for our final weekend. Remember, we meet next week on Tuesday, and then our final weekend in Charlotte together is the 25th and the 26th. And we'll get out in time on Sunday, not to have to worry about food. I'll have some morning food, but then we won't worry about lunch. But Saturday, I'll bring the normal pastries, coffee in the morning, and we'll bring potluck lunch for Saturday. Um, I had an email question. I do have the dates for Saturday class this summer. I should have already sent those out. But the good news is I have secured us a makeup date. The last weekend in July will be our makeup weekend, so we will have 4 this summer rather than 3, that we can. So if we have to do that, and so our summer dates in Charlotte are May 30th and 31st. Let me share my screen here. Huh. I'm getting that argument. Hmm.
I did notice they've done some updates to the platform.
Yeah, yeah, and we're getting ready. But here's the funny. You're talking about Blackboard,
Yes.
And the funny thing is we've discontinued it now. Y'all won't have to, but we're going to start Canvas here before long. Um, I'm already in my training module. I've got to work on that this weekend. Thank you for reminding me. All right. June 13, 14. Now, this weekend, the middle weekend has traditionally been the Next Steps Conference. Y'all will be at that since you'll be in 740. So you can go ahead and plan. Now, that one you can't miss, or you shouldn't miss that one, because that's going to be Next Steps. That's dissertation conference for 740s. Y'all are the honored guests. Now, there'll be other people there, but it's mostly for y'all.
And this is summer residency for 740, or I'm
All
confused.
summer classes.
All summer classes. And we'll be at the old building.
That's what they told me this week. Now, I don't know if y'all are going to have to do, I don't really understand, I'll just say this is what I've been told that y'all will meet this summer right here. And there it is. Be making your plans accordingly. And again, that June 13, 14, that's your next steps. That traditionally has been that middle weekend.
And July is the makeup date for
That
your,
last weekend, if you miss one of the others, that's going to be the makeup weekend.
but if we did not, we don't have to attend that
No,
one.
that'd be makeup. You don't have to come if you didn't miss. And so file save as.
And when do classes begin?
I'm gonna put that one right here. No, wait a minute. Put that one right here. All right. I think that's it. And I'll grade the work that came in today. All right. Anybody have any other questions or anything for the good of the group before we go tonight?
Hey, Dr. Lamb, when do classes begin?
All right. That's a good question. That's a great question. Let me get my calendar. If I can press the right button here. Yeah. Let's see if it's going to. Yeah, they've got it disabled right now for some reason. Every time I hit it, it says 403 forbidden. But I will figure out how to get around that. That's still forbidden. Okay, let's see. Let me think for just a second. All right, commencement is on the 8th. So I would say it starts the week of the 18th. Let me see if I can confirm that. Just one second here. It keeps giving me a forbidden when I try to go in. Hmm.
So that's about May 18th, you say?
Yeah, that would be my guess. Let me see. Every time I hit calendar, it says forbidden. And I don't know why. It's been that way for a couple weeks.
Microsoft has been doing that. Microsoft and Google are fighting right now.
Yeah, they are.
They really are.
yeah. We have departmental day on, it'll be the 18th. You'll have class the week of the 18th. Um, I don't know why you can't pull a calendar up, but it'll be the week of the 18th. So that will obviously, but now the first weekend you got to come to Charlotte is on the 30th.
Got it.
Okay, so let me look. Let me see if I can find, I'm gonna try one more thing before we go here to see if it will let me. Hmm. Oh, I know what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna do summary class list. Manage students, manage classes. I'm gonna do summary class list. And I'm gonna select the summer calendar and see if it will tell me the day that it starts. You can do it. It's not good. It's just sitting and spinning. Summer 26, submit.
When you are done, can you show me one more
There,
time?
yeah, there
Right.
we go. All right, I was right. starts the week of Monday the 18th. Now, generally, as y'all know, excuse me, Sandra, I'll get right back to you. All right. So as y'all know, um, you may not start that Monday. It's according to what day of week your class meets. I generally start on Tuesday and Wednesday. But yes, it will be the week of the 18th. The official start date is the 20th, according to my class rosters for the summer. But we can start anytime the 18th or the 19th if we want to. So my two classes will be on this summer will be on one will be on Tuesday and one will be on Wednesday. I only do Thursday when I'm got three. Tuesday and Wednesday. So yours will probably start on Tuesday or Wednesday of that week, either the 19th or the 20th. So yeah, the official start date's the 20th, but we can always start the day or two earlier. And you will meet class that week virtually, and then your first summer session is on the 30th in Charlotte. Very good. All right, Sandra, back to you.
Quick question. You remember you were showing us how to turn off the Copilot when we're writing? I can't seem to turn mine off. And when I submitted my updated document, my chapters 1, 2, and started on 3, it showed a high similarity score, but I went in and I did the filtering and the numbers went down for that.
Copilot won't hurt you won't hurt you on similarity. It hurts you on AI.
But I don't know how to turn mine won't turn off. Like I remember you clicking on it and showing us how, but mine won't turn off.
Let me see if I can. Mine's
Okay,
off
sorry.
right now. I've got mine permanently disabled, so mine won't work to show you how to turn it off. I might be able to. Let me see if I can. Let me share my screen. I went in and had mine permanently disabled so that I don't make the mistake of turning it back on or it working. So let me pull up a Word document here. All right, so see, I've got mine right
Yeah,
here
yours. Yeah.
under editing.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to go back to what is it, review?
Mm-hmm.
And you got to do show comments,
Mm-hmm.
all markup. See, I've got mine where I can't turn mine back on if I want to.
Okay.
Uh, and let's see.
See?
Let's see now.
Okay.
And if I go back home, Copilot. Let's Google it. How to turn Copilot off. Just
Oh,
Google it.
okay. Okay.
But see, I have mine permanently disabled on my account because I kept spreading AI tracks and I couldn't keep them clean.
Mm-hmm.
I have mine permanently disabled.
Okay.
Let's see. Right there it is. Go to File, Options, Copilot. Let's see if that'll work. File.
Options all the way down to the bottom. Go back to file. Options all the way down by
Something's
account.
in front. Mine's covered up with something because I got mine blocked.
Okay.
All right, right there, File, Copilot. See, I've got mine disabled. Just enable. You can just turn it off right there.
Okay. Got it.
See, I've got mine turned off.
Okay.
There you go. That's how you disable Copilot. Now, thank you for reminding me of that. Um, I had another one this week. And every time I cleaned it, it went up. We started at 30, went to 50, and got to 90 on AI. And I told her, I said, here's the things that, well, I've got Grammarly. I'm using a shared computer at work. I've been putting it in a cloud drive. I mean, to make it easy for me. Um, you know, folks, it's once you get AI in your paper, it's hard to get it out, and we have to check it every time. I just tell you right now, once it's in there, it's hard to get it out. It's hard to make it stay out. As soon as your document hits a computer with Copilot enabled or Grammarly, it comes right back. It comes right back. I can't tell you enough times. Let's look right here. Let me share my screen. This will be the best $300 or less you ever spent in your life, right here. For your dissertation, before you do anything else, you should buy you a cheap laptop. And let me show you what to get. Let me get this out of the way so I can see. What do we want to do? We want to shop laptops. It's not wanting to do its deal tonight here.
You recommend Apple or PC?
No, you can't use an Apple. Nothing is supported in Apple. $269. That's all you need right there. Once it's got an i3 processor, that's all you need. And remember, you don't have to buy Microsoft. You got the account with Gardner Webb. Get you one of these. Asus is a good one. I would recommend that for less than $300, and make that be your machine. Don't ever put Grammarly on it. Don't ever go to Chat GPT on it. It just becomes a word processor for your dissertation. Don't ever hook it into another shared network or any of those kinds of things. Just use your word processing program and get you a thumb drive. That's the way you move it around, and don't take that thumb drive to work and plug it into your machine at work, because you bring back all that stuff that you had on the work machine. And just if you're gonna take it, if you're gonna work on it at work and close the door and hide in the closet and work at work, take your laptop with you. You notice I carry a black bag with me. If y'all know, y'all been around me. I've carried a black. I wore the rings off one that I carried in the school business. I've carried a black leather bag for 50 years. I've got a laptop in it for the last 30. I've carried a laptop in it, or 20, whatever laptops have been around. I've carried a laptop. I have my own. That's what we're on tonight. My account and my on my desk, my laptop froze me out this week, but I was able to get off on my own hotspot and keep on working on mine. But I try to keep everything turned off on mine and not get on shared drives and try to be clean because every time y'all send me stuff, I can infect it just like y'all do. But you gotta be religious on keeping your document clean and free of AI. Sandra was talking about you need to turn off Copilot. Make sure you know how to turn Copilot off. That's AI. Using comments, that's AI. Grammarly, any of those kinds of programs. Don't use that stuff. Yes, I can clean it, but once it's infected, it just keeps on coming back. It's just hard to get rid of. And they have no sense of humor about that, at Gardner Webb about when you get that AI score, they want to call the law and everybody that'll listen. So, you know, again,
So the filtering for Turnitin, you recommend because I excluded bibliography, I excluded quoted text, abstract, and small matches.
yeah, you can do that. That'll be all right. Small matches, 8 words or less. Yeah, exclude your bibliography. Yeah, you can do that. What we're looking for there is that you didn't just copy and paste somebody else's work. And that's all
Okay.
similarity boils down to. We exclude all that other stuff.
Exclude cited text as well.
Don't do that one.
Yeah, I didn't do that one, and I did not
You don't do
exclude,
that one. That's the one that matters.
and I did not exclude methods and materials.
No, don't do that one. Just small matches and bibliography.
Quoted text, no.
Don't exclude quoted text because you got to cite that stuff correctly. If you're going now, what's the rule on quoted text? Somebody remind me. It's in the template. It's in the handbook. What's the
Only
rule
one
on
or
quoted
two.
text? Keith?
I think it's only one or two, the whole paper, right?
I think it's like one, two per Sean, two for how much?
I think it's 2 for the whole
Yeah.
Mhm,
that
right. Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I mean, you can't. So, I mean, um, what students will do is fill up a half a page with a quote from somewhere and say, well, that's a quote. So that's why they put a limit on that and why you can't exclude that because they check for that.
Hmm.
Because people would take and literally copy pages from like meta-analysis and say, well, it's just a quote. No. And so if you have quotes, they shouldn't be more than one sentence long. Now, the exception on that is this. Now, again, hear me clearly. Uh, I was reminded of a fellow I used to work with. Quote me directly, quote me, accurately. I did not say, now, y'all won't get this one. I did not say he had a weak chin. What I said, it would take him half an hour to change a pillowcase. So Keith gets that one. Um, when when you get to chapter 4 and you have done qualitative work, there's a section in your findings when you identify research question 1, first identified theme, whatever your theme is. There's an analytic narrative that explains that theme, what that theme means. Underneath that is participant voice. We use direct quotes from participants there, but they're not from literature. Let me say that again. We do use direct quotes in chapter 4 under participant voice, but not from the literature. So you got to be careful about understanding. Let me show you an example of one that defended today. I've got hers pulled up because I got to upload it tonight since she completed her dissertation today. Let me share my screen. So if we look at Miranda, who finished today, And now I'm doing the last review of her final document. Yep, there it is. There's Miranda's final document. If we go to her chapter 4, all right. So here's the fifth theme under whatever research question this was. Let's see. Research question 3. In a mix, you always start with which one first? Your quantitative findings, then your qualitative findings, and your qualitative findings are always going to be themes. Theme has an analytic narrative, and then guess what it has? Participant voice right here. Morgan Benning explained this. Morgan reflected, see this direct quote right here? That's okay, as long as it's what? Participant voice, not from the literature. I mean, that's pretty simple. That's pretty simple. Now, these will not ring the bell on similarity because these didn't come from a book. These came from the interview transcripts. That's the difference. I get people, well, I saw one that had all kind of quotes in it. Yeah, but look, participant voice, not from the literature. See right here, this is how you cite the literature. The results are consistent with the literature on leadership development that posits extracurricular activities with leadership components foster a sense of autonomy, ownership, and decision-making ability in adolescence. Extracurricular activities, in particular, leadership roles in these activities provide students with opportunities to practice leadership and develop the essential skills of communication, collaboration, and organization that are necessary for success in the long term. And then the citation. See, that was not what that person said directly. That was we paraphrase that narrative. That is fine. That's how we do that. We don't do correct direct quotes from the literature. Direct quotes come from our participants in qualitative. That right there is the difference in how that is done. Right there. This is what your chapter 4 will look like. And once we present the quantitative first, then the qualitative in a mixed, then we integrate the qualitative and the quantitative. We put them together. And then we triangulate them with the literature to make sure that it's reliable. And then we do a summary of the finding, and then we move to the next research question. That's how you will do a mix. If you do a qualitative only, the first thing we'll have will be your interview, and then maybe the second round of interviews or the focus group. Again, we build them together, integrate them, and then we compare them to the literature. That's the way we'll do. But again, that participant voice is an expectation of qualitative work. Now, I know traditionally that's been exclusive to phenomenology, but that's the new rule at Gardner-Webb. We want participant voice. We want participant voice, and that's where the direct quotes come in, and that's where the confusion comes in with folks about, I saw one that was full of quotes. Yeah, you did. It was in chapter 4, though, wasn't it? Under the findings. Other than that, I would not recommend using any direct quotes from the literature. I think they let you have two. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Don't use that too. You'll thank me when it comes time for you to send this thing to the editor, and it looks like you bought a new car when you get her bill. I know that kind of immaterial, the kind of money y'all are paying to listen to me drone on every week, but it gets in your pocket. That editor does. I did have one this week. It only cost her $8.50 though. That's by $250, the cheapest one I've had in a year. The cheapest one prior to that was $1,100. I had one 2,200. He didn't do any of his. He just said, "I'll just have the editor do my reference work." Well, she won't do it for you. She just keeps sending it back to you to do. She ain't your mama. She's not going to do that. She just keeps sending it back to you do it. But every time she does, she charges. She's like a lawyer. She charges you every time she picks it up. She charges you. The bill's running. Yep. We had one that got done this week. Um, I don't know how much it costs. Don't want to know. I'm sure I'll hear it at his final defense. He'll complain. But now his chair estimated in excess of $3,000 because he did not keep up with his quotes and did not keep up with his stuff, and he didn't keep up with his references.
That
And
person rewrote that paper.
well, my point in saying that is this: I wouldn't use links either. Links go dead, and you have to take those out, and you have to find stuff to substitute and go back and rewrite that piece. I would not use links. Now I know, I mean, these people from the way back, they were in class or in dissertation when the pandemic started. And there was a period of time during the pandemic that we let people use links because for whatever reason there was issues with libraries weren't open, websites, different things happened during the pandemic, and we got kind of loose on, and people started, instead of actually getting the documents and reading them and doing the lit review, they were just doing links to online stuff, just an article here and an article there. Now those links, understand, the companies that have those things, they only keep them for a period of time and then they replace them with more. Or if they're in the selling business, and a lot of them are selling those things, you have to buy them. You have to buy that stuff, or people, the advertisement, it's like anything. If nobody wants it for a year or two, they just discard it. And then I had one, she sent me her list. She had 31 links. I was only able to find two of them. And she had to go in and replace all of those in her final manuscript. That's the kind of thing that the editor does. So make sure you're using books and journals that won't go away. Links to articles generally go away, or they, just like that one, since I've used it enough times now, it wants me to buy a subscription. That's what I'm talking about. Those things eventually won't work. Now, the first time you go in to read the article about the Durham lady, you'll be able to read it. But after that, they'll start wanting to charge you. That's what happens on all these links. When you get links to these articles and you say, well, I can get that link right quick and I'll just put the link in there. Well, yeah, until it doesn't work. And trust me, the editor goes to every one of your links. If it doesn't work, then it has to come out. Don't use links. Don't use direct quotes. Make sure that you understand the rules of the road here, paraphrase so that you don't get hit on similarity. Don't copy big pieces of text. I don't care what it is. Be careful on the number of tables and charts that you use in terms of, you pulled them down from somewhere else. Summarize them and make a smaller one, of your own, so that you won't get hit with similarity on those. Um, you know, there's just, it's a hard time now with AI, and you're guilty till proven innocent on the AI deal. And again, if it were me, I'd buy me a little cheap $269 i3 Intel machine. Put my Gardner Web account on it, but don't only use it just to go to my, to sign in and go to my Word account. Because it's free, but I would not be doing anything. I mean, you can check your email and do stuff like that, but just have you one that's all you do is that on it. Don't get on Facebook, don't be on the Instagram, don't get on any of that kind of stuff. That a lot of that stuff backdoors a lot of viruses into your machine. Just have that for your dissertation. And when your dissertation's over, you got a nice laptop that you can do whatever you want to with. But that's as much as you're paying and as hard as it is to chase AI to keep it out of your papers, $300 is not a big ask there. You could do your schoolwork on it too. But that's just my recommendation. You do what you need to. All right. Anybody got anything else? Good questions. I'm looking forward to next week and then seeing you in about 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks in Charlotte. Again, we'll talk about our meal next time. It's good to see everybody tonight. Everybody take care of yourself. Have a big time on vacation, Carl. Uh, I'll be thinking about you at the beach. You have a big time. I'll see y'all next week. Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.